is that our goal is Atzmos, and Atzmos is there, and it's here, and it's everywhere. And if you're just working with Chesed and Gvura, Ava, you're somewhere in the middle. Atzmos is the thing. So Atzmos rather than Gilui, right? So that whole confrontation. So that's another sort of mystical problem. And then we have a simple practical problem. And the practical problem...
Why is that problem?
Why is it a mystical problem?
It's a mystical problem because if we are trying to get to Atzmos, is his boineness the way to get to Atzmos? Maybe, sorry?
I thought mitzvahs were
Yeah, that's right.
That's the point.
Yeah. So you
action.
do mitzvahs tefillin, you know, rather than spend 20 minutes thinking about Shayim. And then we have a practical problem. So the practical problem everyone is conscious of, you know, in terms of time. Time is money. You know, that's the beginning of the whole secularization of modernity, the idea from Benjamin Franklin that time is money. That's
Was his line?
yeah, I think so. So this was said to me by a shliach who married a girl from London. You know, so I had a shtickle sprach from him, and he was now a rav of a shul, very successful, Baruch Hashem. And I meet him at a shulchan conference. He says, "I'm going to tell you this question, and I don't want you to tell me an answer. I just want to tell you the question. I'm a rav in the shul. I'm the shliach tzibur every tefillah. I have to lay. I have to do this. I have to do that. How am I supposed to fit in the Avoidas Hatefillah, which is what I learned Lubavitch is about? How am I supposed to do it? Don't give me any easy answer." So this was his, you know, so I went home, I told his father-in-law, you know, you should be very happy, you're Adam, you know, this is what worried. But it's still a problem. So how do we fit it all together? Now, let's first of all deal with the mystical problem. Okay, so dealing with the mystical problem, there's something in Ein Beis that I thought was relevant. Now this is in Ein Beis, it's in Vayetze, Hey Eter, so it's Simon Shin Samach Vav. So I'm just reading from the Kitzur, just the Kitzur at the end of this Os of the moment. There's Rotzen and there's Rotzen. In other words, there's the emes rotzen, which is the real pneumius of everything. And there's also the midah of avo, which comes through its boinenus and the greatness of Hashem, the way v'atam achai, the way that Hashem is giving existence to everything, that the ika is and the kuz. And when you think about the nature of this chayas, but that is not the rotzen atzmi. The rotzen atzmi is higher. And he goes on to explain, there's the Rotzen Atzmi. The Rotzen Atzmi is on a much higher level. And that Rotzen, that Avo, which is expressed in the Koinenus, is on a lower level. So that's typical, right? So we are trying to get to the Rotzen Atzmi. And then he says the most fascinating thing. However, how do you get to the Rotzen Atzmi? It's misgale kasher tchila hi avoida she'al pitam b'das. You need the avoida al pitam b'das, the ava b'yira, the isboinus in Baruch She'ama v'haya olam and all that. And what it says in Shayich B'emana, you need that impetus in order to trigger off the Rotzen Atzmi. Now, one could understand this in terms of the simple structure that we have in Tanya, that you have the Nefesh HaBahamis and the Nefesh HaBekitz. So the Nefesh HaBahamis surrounds the Nefesh HaBekitz. Really, the Nefesh HaBekitz wants to express it to Abba, to Hashem, but the Nefesh HaBahamis is a big damper. However, if we can get the Nefesh HaBahamis involved in a little bit of Avoidas Hatefillah, then the Nefesh HaBahamis starts feeling the Simcha and the Ava and the Yira and the relation with Hashem, and then that will allow the Nefesh HaBekitz to express itself. So in Kunshas Espinus talks about 5 madregas of Ava of the Nefesh HaBahamis and then 5 madregas of Ava of the Nefesh HaBekitz. So it's, you could see it in terms of this this paragraph in 9 days. He's summarized, this is the kitzur, it's summarizing what that whole law says. But that idea that we need the Avoidas Hatefillah dimension, this bonus, in order to trigger off the atzmos. And we need it to have an effect, and like the Rebbe says from the figure, to have an effect on the zulas. Now, in the Kofs, we then have some very reich biurim on the importance of Avoidas Hatefillah by the Rebbe, particularly in Kof Hei. Kof Hei was when in Tishri, Bov Tishri, the Rebbe's mother passed away, and as a result, during the year of Kof Hei, every Shabbos the Rebbe verbrannt, and every Shabbos there was a Maila Kein Sicha, and some of these were Mughal straight away, and there's one in Noach, that's right, which was Muga in Chelik Hay, and that's Mayim Rabin Lo Yuchlu L'Chabos Es Ha'ava, as it says in Torah. And the Rebbe makes a whole shtel. Everyone has to daven. There's the Baal Esek, and there's the Yosef Oil, and the Baal Esek. Okay, we can understand. There's a problem. The Baal Esek has to hurry up with but the Yosef Oil has to daven, and then even the Baal Esek has to daven as well, at least on Shabbos. And in order for him to daven on Shabbos, has to daven during the week by Riches as well. So by the time you finish the Sikha, everyone has to daven by Avodah, at least at some point. And if anyone thinks that they can get away with not davening when they could, don't think that I'm giving any permission to it. Like they're really strong. So and then also the Dvar Malchus has been bringing out it's the Kviyas of this year as well. So they've been bringing out the Mamorim of Kof Hei, all these Sicha, Maila Kein Sicha. Many of them have all kinds of biurim relating to davening. Eile told us Yitzchok ben Avram holed Yitzchok. That's the Yirat Hator, the Avo Zuta, Avo Rabba, Yiro Elah, that you have to do in Avram, Yitzchok, Avram, Yitzchok, and things like that, Gematrias, different things about davening, little pieces of advice about that. All right, so let's try and have a look at the actual process of Avodas Hatefillah. I would divide 3 types of davening. First of all, there's what I call the Mittler Rebbe style. The Mittler Rebbe style is what the person who really learns with an MS, Kunshas Hispinus. Now, Kunshas Hispinus sounds as if it's a book about having Hispinus. It's actually a book about not having Hispinus. It's about holding back the Hispinus to go higher and higher and higher and higher. That's oh, Sky. Yeah. Like Rabbi Gantz said yesterday, what's a lock for a Hasidic lock? Okay. Yeah, I like that.
No, it's not. It's painted.
Yeah. So the Mittler Rebbe style that is described in Kunshas Hispinus is the person who holds back the Hispinus in order to get to a deeper level. And in fact, this was what my original talk was in that conference in London University, was that the Mittler Rebbe himself wasn't very happy about this, and he wrote a letter in 1823 or something.
Sorry, wasn't happy about what?
He wasn't happy about this very, very deep style of his bonus, where you're like lost to the world. See, if a person takes Shah Yichud by the Mittler Rebbe, which is a kind of expansion 20 times of Shah Yichud Emunah, right? Shah Yichud Emunah is the second part of Tanya, and Shah Yichud of the Mittler Rebbe has, I think it's 52, 53 prakim. and it goes through the whole Seder Shtalshalos, showing the scholars at every level, and a person, learns that and gets into davening, like they're in outer space. That's now the only.
Mr. Ever wrote a letter.
So he wrote a letter saying people should daven in a more simple way, doing his boninus more the style of the Siddur in Dach. The Siddur in Dach, you've got like a brief mimer on relating to the topic of the Mizmor and relating to the Kavanah of the Arizal as well. It's like more. A simpler, more straightforward kind of boninus.
It's more like broken out. Every Mizrah, this is bonus.
That's right.
Rather
Yeah.
than the original one was one build-up.
One, yeah, and also you say, and the Shah Yichud style is bonus. It doesn't relate to the words of the davening. That's the point the Mittler Rebbe made. So you're just in outer space, and where's the davening, But I've heard stories about people who do this. The one person whom I saw actually davens in this style,
The original
the
one.
deep style, is Shneur Zalman Gafni. Now Shneur Zalman Gafni, I didn't learn in Chabad, but I did see him on a visit to London. I saw how he was davening here in London, and it was like that, dead to the world kind of davening. And I heard a story told to me by Baal Tshuva, who witnessed Shneur Zalman Gafni visited Melbourne, and he came from Perth, and he visited Melbourne, and so Yisroel Drobal was very excited to Gafni had come from Eretz Yisrael, and he says, "Where's Rabbi Gafni?" So they said he's davening in the shul, and it was like in the middle of the morning, and the shul was empty, and Rabbi Gafni was sitting wrapped up in talis and trim. So Yisroel Bronan comes up. Rabbi Gafni, no reply. So he calls him a few times. He walks straight over to him. Rabbi Gafni, and this Baal Tshuva is telling me, he's witnessing it. He said, Rabbi Gafni, he can't hear me. So that's the only person I've met who does that kind of davening. So that's the deeper stuff. That's mamash. It's boinunus, the derech prat. And going mamash into another world altogether. Another kind of davening. So then there's so that's level 1. Another level, which thank God I heard many times from Mendel Fudafas, a kind of melodic, heart-sing davening, where every word you can feel has a reality. Baruch Shama, it's and all the way through. That's how Mendel would daven, and then there was who was it in Brunwa? This. Yeah, Rabbi Yisrael Noach. Now, Rabbi Yisrael Noach, his davening was taped by his grandson, and I met his grandson, and he told me how the whole thing happened, how he went into Rabbi Yisrael Noach's Zayda's room, and then somehow taped the davening, and he would daven to the tune of the Pilpul. And and you can hear the words, each word, it's like this thoughtful, beautiful style. So that is another style.
Less weightless. It's more.
Well,
it's more heartsick.
Yeah, but it's the result of
During
yeah.
it's more feelings.
Yes.
I went into his son there to photograph him, and he was completely unaware of what I was doing.
He was 99 years old then.
It was actually 95 at the time, but yeah, pretty old.
Well, that's all right. So you'd say it was, but was he singing aloud?
He was humming, like you're saying. It was slightly.
Because the tape that I got of him, you could hear it very loud. It was very clear what he was saying.
I
And I
wonder. Between the words.
No, not really. No, well,
You can.
the nigun, I think there will be the word with a nigun. You know, you go into the nigun.
It's a bit like singing.
You can hear the words.
Yeah, you can hear the words. It's not like a word and a long gap. But you can hear the words and then the nigun.
Will you sing just that word? Yeah.
I think he did sing.
Just sing that
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
You say a word and I sing.
I think it's worth listening to that tape. You know, it's around somewhere. I got it from Lady Liberov. But it's.
I used to say Vietnamese with him, Motzei Shabbos,
Wow.
but I didn't get any. Vietnamese is kind of short. It's difficult to build up an ecstasy, in 3 pages. So.
Well, that's beautiful. I once saw him. I saw him once. My memory of him sitting with a Gemara and like radiant atmosphere. Just remember, Shmuel and Tzvi tells me and Shlomo Levi, we were going through Brunwa and to St. Paula in France. So someone opened the door and showed me what's wrong. Now the third level, we're talking about different levels in Avoidas Hatefillah. So one is out of the world. Another person who davened in this out of the world style was the grandfather of Itchemer Kagan, Olav Shalom. Now, Itchemer Kagan came from England, and his father had been a secretary of the Friedrich Rebbe. I knew his father. His father was the shamus in the shul, the Grove Lane shul in Stamford Hill. And his father had been a real oivet. And there's a description by Itchemer of how his father is a little boy, 7 years old. He says to his mummy on a late Shabbos afternoon, "Why doesn't Tati come home from shul?" So she says to him, "Well, you go and ask him." He walks up the road and goes to the shul. His father's sitting wrapped in a tallis. "Tati, Tati, Tati." He doesn't answer. He comes home and he tells his mother, finished. So that's another such and so. But then you have the heart, the melodic heart-sing davening. In Zalman Kleinman's painting, Shabbos afternoon, you see someone sitting in this very intense style, wrapped up in a tallis, and then you see other people who are more like heart-sing and singing. And now,
Did you see Reb Nissen? Did you watch?
I once saw Reb Nissen davening in London. I only saw him in London. It was certainly very impressive just to see him.
Which style did he have? Which style did he have?
He was. Did you see him close? I saw him in a minute.
I watched him very closely many times.
And what was he like?
Forgive me for saying it, very heartsick, very zerbrochen, sometimes almost bordering on the bitter, copious tears regularly. He would say Tillim, Shabbos and Varchim without a sefer, and frequently sitting there crying away, and to this day I have no idea what he was crying about.
He sing during davening.
He would lane, and he usually laned the Megillah, and he would lay in Parshas Vayeshev because he had Yotzeit around about that time, and and break out crying on those words. And I'm still looking for the bio. Kasher Ovadity was a tearjerker.
I just remember him.
That was
in the
strong
shul in the
avodah.
Babbage house. His hand, he was like, there was like a pillow or a door, something. He was holding something. You could see the power in that hand. It was tremendous strength.
I felt he created a vision of somebody battling with himself. Does that make sense? Yeah. I felt that's what it was, battling with the inner.
It's supposed to be he was more year.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You got room. That's what you say. Shas close to Shas problem.
Real davening is diese Avot.
Well,
Simple Avot.
yeah, but there's different, there's different levels, and it depends what you're fighting.
Ask Robert if you do or not. The fight is the enemy. You have to get there. You're fighting enemy. If you want, you don't.
All right, now.
It's who won with the fight. If you don't want, you lost it.
What's the third level?
Now the third level, you see, the thing is that I did a lot of interviewing with people for a more recent paper that I was giving in an academic conference in Boston, and the title of the paper, was about experiential spirituality in 20th, 21st century Chabad. So the story of the paper is that, there's a lot of books about Avoidas Hatefillah and early Chabad. What about today? Do any people feel this spirituality? And as a result, as a lead up to this paper, which was given in this December around Hanukkah time, at the previous Shluchim conference, I interviewed a few unfortunate people who sat next to me in the coach to the oil or the coach to the drink. So I would start talking, can you tell me something about, Avoidas Hatefillah, stuff like that. And I interviewed other people as well, including some women. And because I teach in a girls' school, and so part of what I was doing was talking to the lady teachers in the school, mostly girls, unmarried girls, post them. What do they do themselves about Avoidas Hatefillah, and what do they do with respect to the Talmidim about Avoidas Hatefillah? So I got very interesting answers. And one of the answers by a woman, this is a mother of lots of children, and she explained to me a whole thing about how she, as a married woman on Shlichus, began taking more seriously davening, not trying to daven the way she did when she was 18 years old, as she put it, trying to fit in the davening into her life as a mother and shluchim. She found a siddur with an English translation that she likes, and she would write notes in it. And then she began listening to Leibel Shapiro's videos about davening and taking advice from that. And she heard that he said, the Rebbe told someone to think about V'hine Hashem Nitzavolav before davening, so she's written that in a piece of paper and stuck it into a siddur. And she looks at it and thinks about it at the beginning of davening, and then before Yishtabach she thinks about it again. So her definition of davening is the person opens the siddur and starts davening, then when they close the siddur, they're a different person. So that, to her, is what davening is. And I'm reminded when Jonathan Sachs first went to New York, sent by Shmuel Noon, he stayed with some balabos, and he speaks about, or maybe even writes about, he was very struck that balabos, it was one personality going to shul and coming back from shul, a different personality. Like the davening had changed him in some ways, so it was like a different person. So that quality of being a different person. So how do we get to whichever of these levels? And I think the first thing is niggun is a very, very accessible dimension. Now Shmuel Lubetsky sends round WhatsApps of Kisvei Yad of the Rebbe, and just recently there was one. I don't know if I've still got it here. Yes. So this is a letter that the Rebbe wrote to Rabbi Yochanan Gordon, and in Savyat Kotshoy he adds, "B'noi hatomim Yisrael sheyichya kvar managin b'tfilah b'chuli, v'yirabi b'menu nachas ruach b'menu nachas chasidus." So your son already sings in davening. You should have chasidish and nachas from him. So the idea just of singing in davening. Now remember, you used to tell me that speak about singing in davening, and he said there are two approaches. One is singing a tenor of a nigun. So, for example, Reb Peretz Motzkin, whom I never had the chance to meet, but I heard, he would daven with the tenor from the Sholosh tenors. And he would daven with that tenor, that tenor.
The word for that.
Yeah, putting the words to that. And Reb Mendel said another way is a whole niggun in the daven. And Reb Mendel seemed to be saying that that's more difficult and he can't do that, so just a tenor, that's easier. But the Rebbe told someone else that I know, who was then a bocher, to daven with the S and S sich niggun. Es sich ashrei yoishvei veisecha oid yalelu chosem.
The whole thing, that's a tenor.
Yeah, that's right, the whole thing.
Who to who? What had to say on?
It's Schollenberg Hadam, Asbach. So niggun is one issue. Then there's learning. And the thing is, one can learn things about davening. Now, one of the indications that there's a stronger interest in davening. Incidentally, for me personally, when the Rebbe began speaking very intensely about Mashiach and about having the consciousness of Mashiach, to me that spelled davening. That seemed to be saying that we should be davening more ba'avodah, so as to have the kind of consciousness where we're conscious of Elokus. That's the whole thing. The time of Mashiach, we'll see Koach HaPoel B'Nifla. We'll be able to see the Elokus which is in the world around us. And so that was, I felt that was although I don't remember actually hearing the Rebbe put it in those terms, I felt that was an encouragement to daven. And in 1992, a rabbi from, I think from Montreal or Toronto, a Canadian rabbi called Danziger, I've spoken to him on the phone, but I don't know him personally. He translated Kinus Hashluchim of the Rebbe Rashab, and it's published by Kahos. And I asked him, was this a hurrah, to translate that? He said, no, I can't. I don't even know if he remembered how it came about. But anyway, he translated it, and that began what became quite a spate of svarim about davening. So all kinds of svarim, and in Hebrew, Lilmod Echel Ispalel. Now, Lilmod Echel Ispalel, the girl teachers in the Burridge House in London told me how in the Tzfas seminary, pages of that Lilmod Echel Ispalel would be photocopied. They would learn them like in Chevrusa before davening, and then they would apply it during the davening. Right thing, a real, chitric, avoided approach to these girls. And they are, and I discussed with them then, the concept Pirush HaMilos. So someone brought out a sefer called Pirush HaParagraphs. Pirush HaParagraphs, it was a trura made for someone's wedding, a family called Goldstein, and he sells it. So a girl who is a daughter of Rabbi Gordon bought from the author 140 such, 70. She bought 70 such for him.
Pirush
paragraphs. It's like a siddur, but it gives a biur in English before each paragraph. It's a reprint of a siddur with a biur, what to think about before each paragraph. So she bought 70, 35 for her father to use in the yeshiva, and 35 to use in the girls' school with her girls whom she's teaching. That's because each class they're supposed to daven, and they have a teacher, a form teacher, who gives them some kind of input in order to get them spiced up. Now, then comes the question of actual learning, and there are several aspects to this. One aspect is learning things about davening. You know, like one could learn, let's say one learns Mayim Rabbim. One of the people I interviewed told me how he and his chavrusa, they learn Mayim Rabbim in Torah, and they're learning it back slowly with a lot of discussion, and they learn it before davening, and so when they daven, it's a reicha daven. Or it might be learning something which in itself may not necessarily be about davening. For example, about davening, this thing that I quoted from Ayin Beis, actually it's got real chomer for his voidiness in that about Baruch She'amah, and it gives you a way of thinking that you can actually think that during the davening. But then there's learning any mimer and finding a way of focusing it into one's davening. There's a way of channeling it into one's davening, which isn't necessarily easy and isn't necessarily necessary. Now, that's two different things. The thing about it being easy, the Mittler Rebbe spoke about having mezumah in terms of one's knowledge of Hasidus. One should have some cash. You can have £1,000 in the bank, but you can't buy a cup of coffee because you haven't got £2 to pay. So you need a bit of Hasidus, mezumah, that you can use in your davening. Now is a moment for davening. We're going to daven mincha. I once heard the Rebbe speak mentioned Avoidas Hatefillah for mincha as well. I can't remember when, but I was there, and the Rebbe spoke about Avoidas Hatefillah for mincha. So one has a little bit of Hasidus in one's head, one's going to put it into that davening. And then there's another aspect, which as one of the younger respondents that I managed to interview spoke about, this was actually a 13-year-old boy. After learning Hasidus, which love dafka related to the davening, I guess it's easier to daven the words. You're already into like that thing. What's the word? In all the ruchnius, you feel holy. He loves. I guess not holy, but spiritual. You feel more spiritual. And that, you're oisge'edut. You've learned a little bit, whether it's a Maimah, Perik Tanya. Now, some people have, favorite things that they use for davening. So the Rebbe would very often mention Perik Mem Aleph of Tanya, the first page, which talks about, it's interesting because it says, even though Ava is so very important, nonetheless, you need Yira as well. So that whole idea of Ernstkeit. Incidentally, this Maimon, Ayin Beis, talks in a most beautiful way about Ernstkeit, the way seriousness, impregnating everything. And Ernstkeit is one of the qualities that Tshuva divides up into, Tom and T and the Indian of Ernstkeit. And that Ernstkeit, that seriousness in davening is a very profound thing. So there's Perik Mem Aleph, then there's Perik Mem Zayin. One of the girl teachers spoke about how when she learned Perik Mem Zayin with the class, which is about Shema Yisrael being the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Chol Yoim, and just saying Ani Hashem Elokeinu. Hashem is giving Himself to us that we can say Elokeinu, our God, like Elokei Avram. And the only difference is Avram did the work and we're just following along. So, and Ani Hashem Elokeichem, that we say 3 times when we're saying Vayona. So that Hashem gives Himself to us, and all we need is to open our arms and accept. It's no prerequisite. So that of Perik Mem Zayin, and then there's Shah Yichud Ve'emunah, where a person can take the first Perik of Shah Yichud Ve'emunah just to see the Baal Shem Tov's name is a heartwarming thing, and to think about the way in which the Chayas Eliki impregnates everything around us. and start off davening with that, or one can take Perek Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, and then into Zion, where you've got Yehuda Ilah and Yehuda Tata, and you can go through the whole thing that Yud Kei Vav Kei interleaved with Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, with the Yehuda Ilah being where the Yud is Goiva, so there's no world, there's only Elokus and Shema Yisrael, and then a step later is Baruch Shem, where the Aleph is Goiva, and there is a world that's Yehuda Tata, but it's Mole Elokus. So those are a few thoughts about that. Yes.
Just two points, if I may. You mentioned Tanya. I just want to point out Perek Lamed of Tanya, which talks about the things that a person doesn't take seriously, and one of them listed is V'chein ba'avodas hatefillah lishpoich nafshe lifnei Havai ad mitzui hanefesh. I wonder if you can explain what mitzui hanefesh means.
Well, that sounds like what you were telling of goodness and
never. Yeah.
See, that's a level of Ernstkeit, which we may not, to do that with an MS may be a rung higher in the ladder from us. It's, there might be people in this room can lishpoich nafshay mit hanemes. I mean, Rabbi Yankel Gurkov said to me, the whole point of davening is to say a few words mit hanemes. I think it's a matter of finding the rung on the ladder that we can climb onto, or maybe reach to another rung. So I don't know, maybe you can do it.
I'm not going there. I will also point out that the new Sidurim that they brought out with Biur and Chassidus.
Oh, yes.
I've got two daughters who clubbed together to buy one, and they said, and their tinies on me, why didn't tell me all of this? We've never done so well as a result of that.
One is the Tzivus Hashem Siddur.
Yeah. With the big thick, there's one on weekdays, there's one on Shabbos.
This is amazing.
In English.
I just brought out another one for adults.
In my academic presentation, I use this as evidence, these publications as evidence that Avoidas Hatefillah late.
Right. But my question is that with all the Rebbes, at least as far as we know from the Sipurim and how the Friedrich Rebbe catalogued it, we saw this. But interesting, by the Rebbe, one didn't see that klape chutz. How do you interpret that?
I think that the Rebbe was being a universal person, that a person could come out of nowhere and come into 770, and there would be, I once gave a talk about the change in Chazonos in 770, from 1971, 73 when I first went there, to the 1990s, the Chazonos became a show, a concert, a beautiful thing, wonderful Chazonim, with every kind of nigun mixed into the Chazonos, Hamusaf,
But Rebbe encouraged nigunim.
Sure.
That's Chazonos.
Yeah, and introduce Chazonish and nigunim, this kind of thing. Whereas at an earlier stage, I remember Muli, how he would daven l'chodoini, that was the real thing. That was the real McCoy. and now it's every kind of. So the Rebbe gave this very broad thing, and didn't want to appear as a malach. We know the Rebbe's higher than malach. But that wasn't the tzir. The Lubavitch is a central focus.
But there was a line once. There was a line once in the Rebbe said about Yom Kippur. Hast du geweint? Steht doch mich eine Meide de Mais. Hast du geweint Yom Kippur?
What were you going to say?
Just to really really fantastic. Another example, I'm talking to somebody who has partly rediscovered davening quite recently, enhanced by the recent JLI course that I took, which really enhanced as you said in the beginning, I'm one of those who my own davening was significantly enhanced by that. A resource that I found very useful was Rabbi Kaplan's Sidurim, which has that sort of, I don't know if you're familiar with them, they're absolutely amazing. Where it actually has the original Siddur there, and then around it, it's on Hasidus, it's in English, it's got explanations for there's sort of brief insights that really are really incredible in terms of being able to think a little bit.
So which Kaplan?
I think Shmuel Kaplan. We bought two. First was on I think first Shas in a week ago. They're blue. I can't remember what they're called, but certainly it's on a different level. But the thing really I wanted to ask you was, in a way, part of the challenge you addressed at the beginning of the question but didn't answer was the time. So this is all very beautiful and all very wonderful, but there isn't the time today to do this. Even on a Shabbos morning, but certainly if one is, we're talking about Shluchim, if we're not in sort of a Hasidic Sheminyan, but in a regular Balabati Sheminyan, certainly in the weekday forget about it. And even on Shabbos, it's very, very difficult, either because of our own responsibilities or just the speed in which they daven.
If you're not the Shas,
yeah,
then there's a theoretical possibility, like various people did, that they will be with the minyan physically, but when it comes to their own davening, everyone's gone away, and then they daven.
So
I know Shluchim will do that.
Yeah, he quoted the Rabbi speaking about this together, but even that sometimes is quite difficult. But on a weekday, that's even more difficult. There isn't necessarily the time to even do that. And how do we manage that? I mean, you alerted us in the beginning about that's a challenge. One of the challenges. I think that's the key challenge is time.
You know, sometimes love has to be expressed in a very short time.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, just try, but knowing that what you're expressing is an intensity of Ava in that short time. Do all the hachonis before, learn the Maimah before.
Yeah.
And then when you come, you're red hot.
I don't remember missing, I can't remember how many years ago, but Dan Baruch doesn't mean finishing late, it means starting much earlier.
Very nice. All right.
That was the one of the longest baggage.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Dat was al wat vaste 1 minuut.
Ik heb hier nog weer gegeven. En die zijn daar weer gedaan.
Yeah.